talk about Measure 2 from the perspective of a county commissioner. About as close to the people as you can get. I guess City Council will probably be the next closest. But one of the debates on both sides of this issue is keeping it local. You have literally the Vote No on Measure 2 group that has the name keepitlocalnd.com. And you have the proponents of the measure, the Empower the Taxpayer group, that are talking about keeping it local. So we'll talk to one of those folks that governs on the local level, Cass County Commissioner Scott Wagner. How long have you been doing this, Scott?
Going to my 12th year.
And you've had enough, huh?
Well, to the issue of local control, we're home rule, and the citizens have put term limits in, and it's 3 consecutive terms, and I'm coming up against the term limits.
That's right. I forgot there's term limits in the Cass County, right?
Yes.
Wow. Yep. So your time of service is up.
We're getting there, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And end of this year, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep, in December.
So let's talk a little bit about this debate. First of all, are property taxes too high?
Well, compared to what? I think no one's more sensitive about property tax than those individuals that have to levy them. And I think we do everything we can, there again, to meet the needs of our citizens. And here's the one unique thing that I think in this debate that is central. An election, especially at the local level, and when we currently have local revenue authority, it's really elections are the intersection between what people are willing to pay and those things that they feel ought to be funded. And I think that fundamentally, and significantly goes away at the local level if Measure 2 passes. Now, currently, from the information I have, the Tax Foundation, we rank 39th in the nation in property taxes. And property tax relief in North Dakota is in its infancy. In the 2009 session, they passed property tax relief, and it was specifically targeted to the fastest and growing and the largest component of property taxes, which is K-12 education. And so within the first year of property tax relief, a $98 million reduction in statewide collection of property tax. And then they are, again, in a state that's ranked 39th overall. And a recent Tax Foundation report on the business climate, it looked at 5 categories. It ranked North Dakota the 4th best state in terms of our competitive business property tax.
Well, it'd be hard to argue that North Dakota doesn't have something good going right now. No question
Absolutely.
About that. Yet, if you and I walked, up and down the main streets of every town in North Dakota, I bet a majority of folks would say property taxes are too high. So, do we need some reform? Do we? Ed Schaefer said at the end of this, hey, 2 outcomes here. 1, this passes, and it'll force reform. 2, it fails, and it's still time to address the issue and reform. Do you agree with that?
There's always things you can do to improve, but once again, Scott, I would say, what are we comparing it to? And I look across the spectrum of the other 49 states, and I think, we're doing a really good job. Are there things we can do better? As 12 years in elective office, I've had the opportunity to be engaged in 6 legislative sessions. I would say the unfunded or underfunded mandate are things that can help reduce property taxes. One of the unique things about local government, it's where the rubber meets the road. We can't pass things down to another level of government. And so I think there's some issues there that we can deal with. However, you go into a session and there are priorities the state has, and then, there are mandates, and so sometimes, it's not completely funded. I'll give you an example. Human services, that's a mandate that comes down, and it's approximately $12 million per year in Cass County, 73% property tax dependent. I've argued for years, let's get back to a 50-50 cost share. On property tax, or on that cost of
50% state, 50% county.
Yeah, and if we would do that, we could reduce, a substantial amount of about $2.3 million off the rolls of Cass County.
So under Measure 2, what would happen under that scenario? As an example, does the who has the local control? What the Measure 2 proponents would say is that hey, the local subdivisions would ultimately see that as a way to an obligation of the state government as well as the county. What would happen?
Well, the old saying, the golden rule. He who has the gold rules. Well, all you have to do is look at subsection 1 of section 2 of the measure, and really what it states is that taxes upon real property, which were used before 2012, would be replaced. And the interim legislative committee that's dealing with this, Legislative Council, their legal and research arm, put together a report, and their interpretation, because remember, under Measure 2, the state gets the power. They make the decision. So the only requirement is what was expended in 2012. Nothing above that is required. That's what I would call a hard cap.
So who decides? The state legislators decide what Cass County deserves, in this case for human services?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, what is and we talked the appropriate fund the legal obligations, fully fund the legal obligations. Explain to me, in the very unique nature of local government, where priorities may be different from one community to another. I mean, there's the whole reason local government exists in the first place. What is that formula? The allocation formula for law enforcement, for 9/11 dispatch, for your fire protection, for your roads? And is that the same standard for every community? So, I asked the panelists back in October at the North Dakota Association of Counties convention, one proponent and one opponent of Measure 2, and I asked them this question, and neither one of them could give me the definition. It's subjective. It may mean one thing to one to another.
That's where the uncertainty comes in that worries a lot of folks. There's a lot of unanswered questions in Measure 2.
Oh, absolutely.
That leaves that to be decided. Talk a little bit about the dollars and cents of this, because obviously as a Cass County Commissioner, you're wrestling with, X amount of dollars, and I know one of your concerns is, where would the dollars come from? The proponents of this say it'll save $50 million annually in administrative costs. They talk about the fact that you'll actually have more dollars coming in and more investment here. They almost suggest that there's no pain. For instance, they talk about the Beacon Hill Institute study that says economic growth caused by abolishing property taxes will result in more revenue without increases in any tax rates than the lost property tax revenue. You agree with that?
I question that, and I've read the Beacon Hill report, and one of the indications is that it indicates in that report is that you have to find the cuts. And in that report, it indicates, as a potential obvious area of cutting is public sector employment, and the potential of reducing 11,900 plus public sector jobs, 40% of the state workforce in the first year. Well, there's only 11,235 state employees, so 40% is 4,414. You still got just under 7,500 public employees. For the majority of the offset costs that they're talking about, where's the only other place you can take that off from? That's your local governments. That's the only other area left. So how many thousands of firefighters, teachers, police officers would lose their jobs under a post-Measure 2 if, in fact, we're going to take the Beacon Hill study, which indicates, that is an example or an area you can concentrate on the reduction of nearly 12,000 public sector employees, so this doesn't become a transfer cost to state government. You
don't buy that economic growth will result in more revenue without increases in any tax rates because of the reform of the property tax system?
No, I don't.
There'll be less money to deal with and fund the priorities of what you're saying.
Right. I mean, I can't just, being in public office for 12 years, being in economic development for nearly 12 years, I don't see, in terms of this not being a major revenue shift to the state. I think there's a level of myth about we can ride the back of oil to fund everything. I think if you look at what's already allocated and locked up in the Constitution and what's already being used for the oil revenues, I just don't see the money there.
Scott Wagner, Cass County Commissioner, with his thoughts on opposition to Measure 2. Thanks, Scott. We're coming to you live in